one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna go over a few things with you, and then Kayla's gonna talk to you about the e-poll book. Danny is gonna talk to you about the election day process, plus the machines, and so we'll try to get you out of here as quick as we can, because this is very important that we tell you as much as we can to get you prepared for election day. But how many people in here has never worked election before? You? Okay. Okay. First of all, the ballots. Be sure and tell everybody to vote both sides, because there is some of the races are on the back side and the questions is on the back side, and there's no campaigning on election day. We can't campaign for no individual or even the amendments that's on the back. If somebody asks you all, how do I vote, or what does this mean, you have to tell them to read them. We are going to have two big posters about the two questions, because it's hard to read the back of the ballot, it's so small. So we will have them, so the people can read them before you give them the ballots if they want to, and it'll help them to understand it, because it's hard to read. So we don't campaign for either one of the amendment questions or for any candidates. We're neutral that day. And then all of you all that's working outside of your precinct, you all can start voting this coming Wednesday, October the 26th, 27th, and 28th, 31st, and then November 1st and 2nd, or early voting on November 3rd, 4th, and 5th at the courthouse at Pineville from 8 to 4, and then the early the absentee 6-day voting in Middlesboro at the clerk's office, and then the 3-day early voting is at the community center in Middlesboro. And then election day, anybody would have to go to their precincts to vote. And then after this meeting's over with, or at the end of it, if the ones that's going to work the early or the absentee will meet for just about 10 minutes, so we can just discuss a few things with you. That'll be it'll be helping on election, when you working at the election. So I'm going to turn it over to Kayla Carnes, and she's going to tell you about the e-poll books, and then Danny will tell you about the shifts and the process.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep mine shorter than Danny's. So, I'll go over the e-poll books with you all. Of course, you're going to have a case that will be in the bottom of the machine. This will be what the clerk will use to check in the voters. So when you open it, you're going to have a poll book with a charger and a little MiFi in a charger. Then of course you'll have your little stylus pen. First thing you need to do is get this MiFi and turn it on and plug it up somewhere. There's a little power button in the top corner, you'll just hold it in. Once it comes on, it'll light up. You don't have to do anything else with this, just power it on and plug it up. Then you'll get your poll book. It just opens like a book, and it sets up on the stand. Power button is in the top corner. You'll just hold it in until it comes on. Okay, once it comes on, I know it's hard to see, but at the very bottom there's a little app that you'll click, and it takes you to the screen that you'll check in on. So the clerk can just hit start and put in their name. This screen here, you will come back to it each time. Every time you check in a voter, you're going to come back to the same screen. So, of course, you're going to hit driver's license, and then you will scan their driver's license. Once you scan their driver's license, you want to verify that all the information for that voter is correct. Their name, their address, even their date of birth. Once you pull up the voter, it's going to tell you what precinct they're voting in. And if that's your precinct, then of course they're going to check in on this iPad. If not, it will say wrong location. That voter then would have to sign in on the supplemental roster. So you're going to hit yes, continue if they're in the correct place. Hang on. Let me find one first. That's in the correct place. If it's wrong location, it'll pop up and tell you. It'll say wrong location address. And I know this is kind of hard to see, but I'll let you all, after class if you want to, if you want to use it, you can. Well, apparently all my cards are wrong location, sorry. But anyway, if it was, you would just hit continue at the bottom and it would flip over. They would sign, flip it back, you sign. You can also search the voter by a manual search, and it's going to ask you what ID that you verified them by, whether it be Social Security card, etc. You can type it in by their name, their birthday. Another thing, always make sure that the location down here at the bottom matches what precinct you're in. That's good to do first thing that morning when you power it on. The check-in total at the bottom is how many voters have checked in. This little menu button, if you spool a ballot, you'll need to go up there and click spool ballot. And spool the ballot on the iPad as well as your ballot accountability statement. Election night, you will go up here to the menu and hit log out. And it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to log out? Or if you want to close the election night, you're going to hit close the election.
You don't do it every day on the early.
Just not on the early, just on election night. You can actually go to the menu and go to check-in totals and just see totals that way. Anybody got any questions?
Kayla, if it shows up that they're the wrong location, do they still vote it? They don't vote it out of poll, do they?
Well, they could be at the right location, but maybe they didn't change their address.
So
that's when you would call us and we would verify if they could vote there or not.
Okay.
But if they're not, they just go to their other.
Right. If not, if they're not in the right spot, then you would send them where they need to go. Okay, so after you hit close election, you're just going to power everything back off, close it up, and put it back into your case. Nobody has any other questions?
Does that go back to the courthouse that night?
All right, I will not be able to beat Kayla. So let's start by swearing you guys in. If you guys will raise your right hand, I'll just read this, and if you'll just say I do or I will at the end. I do solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute to the best of my ability the office of election official according to the law. And I do further solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within the state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as a second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. So I think I'll go through the machines first, and we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. So there's only a couple of new poll workers. So I think we're going to skip going through the setup process on this one. As you guys know, you probably don't use this a whole lot. But it is important to get this up and running as soon as we can, and then you guys can kind of take your time getting this one set up and read your book. So let's just start with the machine guys first. Be sure you know where your eScan key is. We gotta have access to this lid, and we'll see the key here. I'm just gonna unlock that. This lift comes forward a little bit so that we can lift this off. And you should have your verification sheet on top. And we're gonna go ahead and cut the seal. You're gonna have a yellow seal on your machine as well. Go ahead and cut that off. And then you're gonna have to unlock the side door here as well and get access to this. Everything in here has to come out. Make sure you get the privacy screen and make sure you have your power supply. Is that gonna be in here or you guys put it in the black bag? Okay. So you'll make sure you have your power supply. First thing we're gonna wanna do is plug this in to a working outlet. And you'll know that by getting a green light on your power supply. That lets us know we've got power. And then you can go ahead and plug this into the back. And you can see on number 4 there, it'll only go in that one hole. So go ahead and do that. And then go ahead and turn your power on with an on-off switch. It'll take just a minute for that to start up. While that's starting up, go ahead and get your verification sheet. And judges, this is your job. You're going to see out to the right of this, your initials need to go here. We're just verifying that everything on here, seal-wise, number-wise, is correct. So you'll have a blue seal sitting on top that we're going to use in a minute to lock and seal this back up with. Your yellow seal that we cut off, you're going to confirm that number as well. You'll have a red seal that looks like this, that's going to be on the side. Check that number to make sure it matches this as well. That's going to hold that election media in. You're going to have a PVT count, which we're going to be able to confirm that in a minute when we put our zero tape off. And my machine sounds pretty rough. Yours should not sound like that on election morning. So judges, that's your responsibility to check that. It'll take just a minute for this to fire up and print out. So the first thing that we come to is the open polls and print zero tape at the bottom of 7. We're going to print that zero tape. Don't forget that step. So we're going to print 0. That's going to take a couple minutes to print out. It's going to print every candidate's name, and it should have a 0 beside it. So just confirm that before you tear that tape off. I'm going to cancel that and save some paper. Then you're going to press the open polls button. So we're just going step by step. Judges, you all know it's your responsibility to get these set up. It works best if one person reads it, one person performs the actions. So we're going to put in that password, all ones, 6 ones, and it's not touchscreen, so you got to use the little buttons on the side to go up and over. Press accept. It's going to take that just a second to finish printing. And here's where we can confirm that PVT number in the top left corner. Just make sure it matches what's on the verification form. When that prints out, we're going to go ahead and tear that off. And everybody needs to sign this. There's going to be a place for you all to sign this. You're going to have one of these envelopes for each machine. Be sure you have those that morning as well. And that's just our checklist of everything that comes back. So we've got one for our eScan with our opening polls 0 tape. So we just completed that. So we can check that off. You're going to go ahead and put up the privacy screen. So the privacy screen just sits around this. And you'll notice I've already put my power supply up here on the top. That just keeps it out of the way so people don't kick that and unplug it. And then we're going to lock and we're going to use our blue seal to seal it back with those openings just like we did that morning. That has to stay locked and sealed all day. I have to have a court order from a judge in order to get back in that machine. So make sure you get everything out of it that morning. Any questions on opening the polls? You guys are pros at this by now, I'm sure. All right, very important to stop and wait 12 hours before going to the next page. It's happening. So, at the end of the night, I'm going to take our privacy screen off, press the red button on the back, and we're going to put in the password, which is still all ones. Press accept, and there's going to be a button in the middle, step 3, that says close polls. Are you sure you wish to close polls? You're going to say yes. Put in our password again. I've got good practice. Press accept. It's going to print off a little tape. It'll take just a second. I'm going to press continue. Press finish, and then we're going to print those 3 tallies. That's going to be our election results. Closed polls tally tape, that's our second checkbox, so make sure we get 3 of those. One of those goes on the door. All 3 tapes have to be signed by at least, well, all 4 election officials. Page 6. The other 2, of course, come back in your envelope. Then it says on number 10, that verification form, we're going to locate the ending PVT count number on here and record that as well. So that just tells us how many people used it throughout the day. And that's going to be important a little bit later when we get to ballot accountability, which it does talk about the ballot accountability statement there as well. So at that point, you can turn it off. You can, the red seal on the side, twist it, break that seal. And this is very important. Lift this door up on the side. There's a button here on the side that we press that pops out this MBB card, and that's our 3rd checkbox on the envelope. I knew I flew through that, but I know you guys have seen this a lot. I do want to talk just a little bit about paper ballots. You know, again, we cover this every election, but you are going to have a straight party option on every ballot. So straight party, sometimes voters get confused with that, think it's asking for their party, so they go ahead and mark that. So say a Republican voter comes in, they fill in the Republican straight ticket. Well, then they go down through here and vote. They may vote for every Republican, that's fine. Same thing with the Democrat. If they're a Democrat, they might think they're a Democrat, they mark the Democrat straight ticket, and then they come down and mark all the Democrats, that's fine. But they can cross-party vote once they get down here. So, say they want to vote for the county attorney, they want to switch and vote for the opposite party of whatever they pick for the straight ticket. It's still going to keep all of those other selections selected. So if they press the Republican straight ticket, it's going to keep all Republicans except for that one race. It'll flip and vote for the Democrat. So anything that happens below the straight ticket takes precedence over that straight ticket option. If they hit the straight ticket, it's not going to vote for any of their school board members. It's not going to vote for the city council. It's also not going to do anything to the constitutional amendments. Has anybody not seen the constitutional amendments? Not read those? Take up almost the whole back page. So it takes the guy that does the audio for the ADA accessible machine. I think it took him about 4.5, 5 minutes to read those questions. So if a voter comes in and has never seen that before, they're going to be while voting. Debbie has ordered some posters that have blown that up, that are going to be hanging on the wall so that it's going to be easier for them to read that before they get into the ballot, because it is pretty small print. Write-ins, you're going to have a write-in on every race. You do, it sounds like, have one local write-in, and then there's a couple of statewide write-ins that are going to be on this ballot. And I'll go ahead and talk about some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. We won't have to recover in that book, so it'll save some time. But a voter, you're going to have a list of those write-in candidates in your supplies. You can't just lay that out on the table. A voter has to know that there's a write-in, and they have to request to see that write-in list before you can put it out there. So be aware of that. It will be in there, but don't just lay it out on the table. It's only if requested. Any questions about ballots so far? All right, probably the most common issue you're gonna have all day is a voter voting for too many candidates, whether that's on accident or on purpose. If they're trying to see if the machine will, they can cheat the machine or whatever. Sometimes they accidentally get into the box of another one and it looks like they're trying to vote for two candidates. It's gonna kick that ballot out and it's gonna tell them that they've overvoted. And if that happens, then you would give them a spoiled ballot envelope. Don't touch their ballot once you've issued it to them. Let them fold it up and put it in this envelope, and then that gets placed in the side of this machine over here, the spoiled ballot envelope. You can issue, how many ballots? 3 ballots. You can't give them a 4th ballot. So if they mess up the second one, then you need to let them know this is the last ballot I can give you. Whatever they vote on that 3rd ballot has to go in this machine and has to count. So if they mess it up, it is what it is.
Well, if it says wrong ballot, though, still.
So there's an option on here for them to go ahead and cast it. It'll count everything that was marked correctly, but it won't count that race that was messed up. And I know Debbie mentioned it, but remind them that there are races on the back, because if they cast that ballot and it goes in there and they're walking away and they're like, oh, I wanted to vote for the questions. Can't give them another ballot and let them vote for the questions. So once it's in there, it's a done deal. Any questions on the machines? I'm gonna stay afterwards, just like we're gonna have the e-poll books up here afterwards. If you guys want me to go over any of this stuff, if you're new, then we can walk through it in a little more detail if you want.
Getting back to the write-in, if they ask the workers, like, how do I vote for a write-in? Don't it take a Republican and a Democrat to explain to them the process that they would have to do for that write-in?
Well, so with the paper ballots, I think it's fine for you to just say, you fill in the box that's by the word, so every race has the word write-in. So you would just fill in the box by the word write-in and then write the candidate's name beside it. You're gonna have instructions as well, right? You guys have the instructions on how to do a write-in that are gonna be for this machine. Those have to be posted, so make sure you do have those on election morning.
Is there more than one write-in for any one office?
I don't think so, no.
So they have to know the name of the write-in?
No, they just have to know that they're write-ins. Or if they ask you, are there write-ins?
So there's nothing on the ones that don't have write-ins that says write-in? It's just on the ones that have write-ins?
No, it'll be on all
Nothing
of
on
them.
any of them.
Yeah.
No write-ins, the write-ins cannot be on the back.
But I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's-
have a person's name there and two people from, and then there's, it says write-in.
Yeah. I knew it was gonna happen. I'll pass a couple of
The
them.
voter writes the name in, they want to vote for it, they write the wrong person.
You guys. Yeah, so every race has the word write-in as an option at the bottom. So the way it works is that there's a candidate filing deadline where the candidates have to file before they can get their name on the ballot. Well, then there's another deadline that's a write-in deadline. So they can be qualified as a write-in, but their name obviously is not gonna be on here. Well, we don't know who's gonna file as a write-in, so we have to put the write-in on every race just in case.
Nobody will be counted except for anybody that filed with the state and with the clerk's office to be a write-in.
Currently, those are one local and 2 states.
Yeah. As far as I know, you only have one, right? Yeah. And the Board of Elections at the end of the night, unfortunately, is gonna have to address every write-in cast throughout the whole county. So they're gonna get the Mickey Mouses, the Donald Ducks, the inappropriate names. Those are gonna be up on the screen, and they're gonna have to,
The none won't count unless they have filed with the
right.
state.
Yep.
So if they come in and they take a look at the ballot and they see all these write-ins and they ask you any question about the write-in, but then they say, well, do you have a list of who we can write in?
Right.
Then that's when we can show them
Yep.
the write-in list. But until they ask about the list, we keep our mouth shut.
Correct. And then don't give them the list, because you know what'll happen to the list.
Yeah, I know. You hang on to the
Yeah.
list and
So if
just
they vote, if they make an X or fill that in, or write-in, and it is somebody that's written in, but they don't have the name on it, will it still count? It has to
won't
have the
count.
name too.
They have to put the name on
So
there.
they have to have a name.
Correct.
They check the box and they write the name of the person.
Have to have it on.
Yeah, and you all won't be addressing that. The board will have to address that. Yeah, they'll have to look at each one of those. It takes a picture of each box. And you could theoretically have, like for city council, if you noticed on that, there's 6 write-in options for that city council. You could have 6 people that file 4 write-in, but you don't. You only have 1, and I don't even know which race it's in, but that would be an option. The jailer.
What are the 2 sections?
I shouldn't have, but I don't.
Like, well, it's gonna be
So if we want to switch over, we'll go, if there's no questions on the machines, we'll switch over and go through the state book, and this one's going to take a little bit longer. We're just required to go over this every time. So this book, if you've worked at polls for several years, the book's been the same for years. Well, they've changed the layout of the book. It's all the same information, it's just been changed the order, and it actually flows a lot more logical. The forms that we talk about, you know, I would always say, turn to page 64 and look at the form, and then you have to turn back to page 5. Well, the forms have been put right after where we're talking about them. So, same information, just a different order. Page 6. So there's several pages here that I won't read to you, but it's just election, how the structure is at the state level with the Board of Elections, and then the local level with the Board of Elections. There's some information about becoming a poll worker, facts about elections in Kentucky that I'll let you guys read through that. So we're going to just talk about page 12. We'll start on page 12. So there's 3 different types of voting, which Debbie kind of already covered these. There is the mail ballot, so you can request a ballot be mailed to your house, but you do have to have a reason for that. And you'll see those 8 reasons listed on page 12 and 13. It's not like it was during COVID where anybody could just request a ballot be mailed to their house. You have to have one of these excuses now. And then the same thing with the 6th day on page 13. That's walk-in absentee. We've had that in the past. It's been for more days. It's only 6 now. But again, you have to have an excuse to do that. So you're going to be out of town, that type of thing. On page 13 and 14 are those excuses. And then page 14 at the bottom is that early voting, where those 3 days, the Thursday, Friday, Saturday before the election, anybody can come in and vote for no reason. So plenty of opportunity for everybody to get a vote. You guys are more than welcome to use any of those second and third options, the 6 day or the 3 day, or if you're going to be working at your precinct on election day, you're welcome to vote at your precinct on election day as well. All right, so let's go to 16. So you're going to have a daily voting machine verification sheet, and you see that an example of that there. You should have one of those for each machine that you have at your location, and that has to be filled out. If you're working early voting, you're going to have to fill one of these out every day for that machine. Where it's asking about, well, first of all, the beginning memory device seal number, that's really the only thing that I think is kind of confusing. That's going to be your red seal. That's where the memory device is locked in. Those seals should not ever be broken. So even at the end of the election, it still should be sealed. Now at 6:01, when we close the polls, we're going to break it, but it doesn't, that's not recorded on here. So your seals should be sealed from now until the election day is over. The ballot reconciliation statement, page 17, that's going to be similar to your ballot accountability statement. It's a little more summarized. The state just wants an official sheet with that information on it. The number of ballots cast during the day, the number of unvoted ballots, and then the number of full ballots. So you're going to have to fill one of those out as well. So you guys get some extra paperwork to do this election. Page 18. So 5:30, right? Is that when you guys are here? 5:30?
No later than 5:30.
5:15, 5:30. You guys can start setting up once 3/4 of the people are there. So I think you are back to traditional. You got 4 people at each location. Is that right? So if 3 of you all are there, then you guys can go ahead and get that process started. Security plans, so your machines are already going to be delivered there. You don't have to worry about taking your machines. You guys are there for the duration of the election. So once you get there that morning and get everything set up, you got to stay until the polls are closed. You can't sneak off and go to McDonald's for lunch. You know, you can't do that. Now you can step outside and get take a break if you've got some downtime. Obviously, you guys are going to have to work together and trade positions and, you know, use the restroom, that type of thing. But you have to stay at the polling location all day. You are going to have those paper ballots. I always recommend just having 1 pad of each ballot face on the table at a time. Keep the rest of them in your ballot bag. Page 20. You should occasionally compare the following: the number of votes recorded on the voting device versus the number of people that have checked in on that e-poll book. So it sounds like you're going to be having 2 e-poll books at each location, so 2 check-in stations, is that right? Two check-in stations at every place? Is that, or most? E-poll books, yeah, on election day, or is it just one? Just one, okay. So easy math for you guys. Look at your e-poll book to see how many people that have checked in. Go over and check the scanner and the ADA device, add those up, and make sure they match what's in the e-poll book. Some counties are using, you know, if you've got those vote centers or whatever, they've got 3 or 4 scanners and 2 or 3 e-poll books, and you got to keep track of that all day. So a little bit easier for you all. Let's see. So page 22, clerks, this is just going to start talking about morning duties. Kayla's already covered that e-poll book. You guys are going to be responsible for getting that set up, your MiFi connected, that type of thing. Judges, your responsibility is the machines. Make sure you got your ballots. Very important, a good chance to talk about the ballot accountability statement. Mine's a little different than what I had, but you all should have an example of that in the book, I think. It's that lavender color sheet that it's very important to check that first thing in the morning to make sure that if it says you have X number of pads of A101 county or A101 city, make sure you have exactly that many, no more, no less, because you're going to have to be signing this at the end of the night, accountable for all those ballots. So if you come up at the end of the night and you're 50 off, then you're going to have to explain why you're missing 50 ballots, but you may have never had them that morning. So just double check that, make sure you got the right number of ballots that this says. Your verification sheet that we talked about up here that's on the machines, that's on page 24. Yours is going to be similar to the one on the right. Sheriff's election morning, when you get there, first thing, make sure there's no campaign signs sitting outside the door, because there's no electioneering within 100 feet unless it's on private property. So if there's a house next door to you, then we can't do anything about that. But otherwise, there's no signs or nobody standing outside the location electioneering within 100 feet. So make sure you check that. You're going to have to put up the flag if there's not already one there. And then on page 26, you're going to have some posters that you're going to have to make sure you've got. Did you all have any withdrawals after the ballots? Okay. Is it countywide? City Council Middlesboro. So if that race is on your ballot in your precinct, you're also going to have a candidate withdrawal poster that needs to be posted at the precinct, because that person withdrew from the election. They're not going to, no votes are going to be counted for them. So you just need to make the voter aware of that. So we put that sign up. 27, the eligibility to vote. That's pretty much going to be taken care of by that e-poll book. If there's any issues with voter eligibility, it's going to give you a warning on that screen. We're talking about clerk's duties still. And I know if you've new and never worked this before, this is overwhelming. You're not going to be able to remember all this, but you're going to have somebody there with you that's worked before. But clerks, before we can give a voter a ballot, we have to ID them. And here are the forms of ID on page 28. Most people will probably have the driver's license, and that's going to make your life easier. It's going to make their life easier on check-in. Sheriffs, if you aren't busy and you want to stand by the door and kind of remind people to get that driver's license out, so that they can get in and out of there quicker. That would be a help. So here's the forms of ID: the Kentucky issued license with a voter's name and a photo, a United States ID with the name and a photo, a military ID with the name and a photo, a college ID with the name and a photo, and a government issued ID with the name and a photo. Those are all valid forms of ID. Unless it's a driver's license, though, you're going to have to manually search that voter record in that e-poll book. 6 through 10 are also acceptable forms of ID, which is a social security card, a state board of elections approved county ID, any other type of ID with the name and a photo of the voter, food stamp, EBT card, credit card, debit card. Those are all valid forms, but you see to the right of that, you see SBE 71. So you're going to have some of those forms in your supplies that you would have to provide to the voter, and they'll have to fill that form out. You may want to step them to the side if there's a line, let them fill it out, and then get back in the front of the line. It's not a long form, but it's just extra paperwork. So if they have their license, it's better to let them go to the car if they left it out there, that type of thing. And then finally, number 11 is, if you guys know them, your cousin comes in to vote, they don't have their ID on them. That used to, all you had to do was say, yep, I know them, and just sign your initials. Well, now you have to fill out a form if you're going to do that ID. And that's SBE 72, and it's just basically you swearing that you know who they say they are. So extra paperwork on you. Again, hopefully we can find some type of ID and avoid that. Page 29 is using the e-poll book. Okay, let's cover that so we don't have to go over that again. 33 at the top, that's where it's going to start talking about those write-ins that we just covered. So I'm not going to cover that anymore. And the bottom of page 33, clerks, you're going to possibly see this. If you check a voter in and you get this yellow warning down here that says absentee ballot requested, that means that they requested that paper ballot to be mailed to their house. And now they're here on election day wanting to vote. We can't let them vote at the precinct because they've already requested a ballot. So I would suggest that you either send them to the courthouse or have them call. They're probably going to have to meet in front of the board because the board's going to have to decide whether they're going to let them vote. If that ballot didn't come back, that's an individual basis. You all wouldn't be making that decision. So you'll see that authorization to vote on page 33. If they went to the courthouse, the board said, yeah, we're going to let them vote, they're going to send them back with this form filled out. And then you would be allowed to let them vote at the precinct. But that's a call you'll have to make. Same thing on page 34 with the military absentee requested. So if somebody in the military requests a ballot in the primary during the May election, then the system automatically assumes they want one for the fall, and then their deployment could have been up and they came back in between times, and now they're here wanting to vote. That's fine, they're gonna get a vote, but again, you need to make that phone call to make sure that military ballot hasn't came back and we're letting them vote twice, because that would be illegal. So always make that call if you see either one of those warnings. Address confidentiality program. So we'll talk about addresses a little bit. Clerks, you're gonna have to confirm that address with the voter when you check them in. It's very important that they get the correct ballot, and they get the ballot of where they live, the precinct where they live currently. So if you check them in, as Kayla showed you earlier, say the address is 123 Main Street, and then it says they get ballot style A101. Well, if that address doesn't match, then they're possibly not going to get that A101 ballot style anymore. So you need to make a phone call to make sure that they still may live in that same precinct. The addresses just don't match. And then we would still be allowed to let them vote there. They would have to sign that supplemental roster. Go ahead and get them to fill out another voter and then a new voter registration card to get that address updated. Or when you make the phone call, you may have to be telling them to go to a different precinct polling location to vote. So just be aware of that. But if they're part of that address confidentiality program on page 34, that address is going to come up as 700 Capitol Avenue, which is the address of the Capitol. And all that means is that they're a part of that program that keeps their address confidential. So they wouldn't have to reveal that address to you. We would just, whatever that says that the ballot style is what we would go with. The bottom of page 35, voter's name is different. Typically happens when a lady gets married. She forgets to update her voter registration. And here's that voter registration card on page 36. Just give her a new registration card, let her update that information so that we have that for next time. And page 37, that's what we just talked about that address. Make sure if it doesn't match to call. There is a date at the middle of page 37, October the 11th through November the 8th, and that's when the books were closed. So a voter is actually allowed to go back to their previous county one more time to vote if they moved during that time period, because they didn't have a chance to update that registration. So you may, you're gonna have to ask them when they moved. When did you move out of county, or when did you move into county? If they give you that date, then they're gonna go back to the previous county one more time. So you might be sending them back, or they might be sent here. If they moved before October the 11th, then they're not gonna get a vote in either county. So that's just the law. You can refer them to the clerk's office, the Board of Elections, for that, if that happens. And then there's the oath of voter that I mentioned. That would just be filled out if those addresses don't match, that type of thing. So page 39 is more e-poll book. So this is a new process that has been implemented into the e-poll book. I'm not even sure that you can test it out yet. I know the other day when I did a class you couldn't. So Bell County is going to keep that supplemental roster that we talked about. So if a voter is supposed to vote in your location, but they're not on that e-poll book, then you would fill out that manual supplemental roster just like we always have. So you can ignore page 39 through 43. All right, so the bottom of page 44 is challengers. We don't have any. That deadline is passed, so we don't have to cover that. You guys upset with skipping all this? All right, election sheriff duties throughout the day. So campaigning, that's probably going to be one of your biggest things. No electioneering within 100 feet of the polling location. Something somebody brought up to me in one of my classes that I wouldn't have even thought about is if somebody brings their own pens in to vote, that's a vote for so-and-so, and then leaves it on the tables laying around. Sheriffs, just kind of keep an eye on that, collect those pins, because we can't have that at the polling location. Bumper stickers, hats, t-shirts, we're going to let them come in and vote, and then they need to leave. So you can't be hanging out after you've voted, because that would be electioneering. So again, sheriffs, this is your responsibility to kind of keep an eye on that. Exit polling is allowed. So if it's some type of media that wants to interview people as they're coming out, that's fine. They have to be outside the voting room. They can't be inside. They can't be harassing those voters. They don't have to answer, obviously. They can ignore them. If they're continuing to harass a voter, then sheriff's on page 47, there is your sheriff's report. So anything out of the ordinary or anything that doesn't go as planned on election day, this is going to be your report that you're going to be filling out and signing at the end of the night. You can't write too much in there, so whatever you feel like might need to go on there, just write it on there. Board of Elections loves to read that kind of stuff, I'm sure. Ballot selfies, they are legal, so if a voter wants to take a picture of themselves with their ballot and post it on Facebook, then they can. Sheriffs, you have to watch to make sure they're not taking pictures of you guys. They're not taking pictures of other voters or that voting process. That would be illegal, and you would have to make a note of that if it happens and write it in your sheriff's report. Page 48, there's just that form, that ballot accountability sheet that we talked about. You've got a sample of it in your book already. Voter assistance, we're going to talk about this. So a voter with a disability, which the types of disabilities are on page 50, and that's blindness, physical disability, or an inability to read English. Those are the three reasons that a voter can request assistance. And that means that they can bring somebody with them, take them into the voting booth, and help them fill out their ballot completely. They can, whatever. They could go into this machine with them, help them fill out their ballot. That is voter assistance, but you'll see that form on page 49. That has to be filled out completely. If the voter has permanent assistance, clerks are going to see that in your e-poll book. It's going to pop up. All that means is that they don't have to sign that form. Everything else has to be filled out and signed. So the person assisting them could fill that out, and then you guys have to sign that as well. If they don't have anybody, then it would take the 2 judges to go in and help them fill out this ballot. And Debbie touched on this, but those constitutional amendments, they're long. So if they want you to read them to them, you can do that. But it's gonna basically shut your precinct down for a little while if both judges are busy, unless the clerk can handle, giving out the ballots, or the sheriff maybe can help hand out ballots. But you can read that to them. But if they say, I don't know what that means, what does that mean? Then you cannot give any opinion on what you think it means. It's very confusing. It's not worded real clearly. It's, it is confusing, but you can't give your opinion on that. That would just be just like you giving your opinion about a candidate. So just be aware of that. And you're going to read it to them once, and then they're probably going to have you read it again because they're not going to understand. So there it talks about the application for permanent assistance. That is just them signing that little oath as to why, and they can, it can be for blindness or physical disability. Those are the things you can apply for permanent assistance. And there on page 51, it shows you how that will appear on the default book. Provisional ballots, you got a bright orange bag that we're not going to open. We're going to call if before we would open that. It's sealed with a lock, zipped up. If you open that, if you break the seal, then there's several pages and steps that we have to talk about. And I don't want to do that. And so you can see 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57 is all dealing with provisional ballots. And typically what that would be used for is if you can't find that voter in the e-poll book, you call the clerk's office, they can't find the voter in the e-poll book, but they're just insistent that they want to vote, like they want their vote to count. It still has to go in front of the board, and the board may say, you're not a voter here, so we're not going to let you vote. But they may make the decision, all right, we'll let them vote a provisional ballot. It's only going to be the federal races. I think there's only a couple, so nothing local they're going to get a vote on anyway. So before you break the seal in the bag, call. There is an accountability sheet on page 57 that's going to be on the front of that bag. That still needs to be signed by everybody, and you can access that without breaking that seal. So just pull that out at the end of the night, everybody signs it, and it gets brought back as part of your paperwork. All right, so closing out the election. So clerks, you're going to close out those e-poll books. Make sure you close the polls on them at the end of election day. Don't close them if you're working early voting. Just log out. Judges, you're going to be closing out the machines. Be sure that you follow the steps. Use your 2 envelopes, and everything comes back. We've got to have all of those drives. We've got to have all those paper tapes, or you'll probably end up going back out and making an extra trip to get that. Sheriffs, you can take down the signs, bring those back. Sheriffs, you are the official timekeeper. So if by some chance there's a line at 6 o'clock, then you need to get in line behind the last person in line and follow them up. If anybody else comes in after 6 o'clock, you're going to have to turn them away. Especially now, because they've had those 3 days of early voting, they've had 6 days of, excuse. So plenty of time and plenty of chances to vote. So if they arrive after 6, they're not going to get a vote. All right. Page 63, Disability Awareness Guide. I won't read that to you. Let's put you to sleep. I've already seen a couple of yawns. But everybody just needs to be aware that everybody's treated equally. We're not going to assume somebody has a disability when they walk in, or if they're in a wheelchair. We're not going to say you have to use the accessible machine. Everybody's treated the same. Election laws are on page 67. So I'm going to read this top one to you one more time, skim through it. An election official or person entrusted with the custody of a voting machine shall be guilty of a Class D felony if he or she knowingly and intentionally directly connects or attempts to directly connect a voting machine or voting system that tabulates results to a public network or the internet. So what that's saying is that these machines do not have modems in them. They can't be connected to the internet. Bluetooth, there's no Bluetooth. I think these were out before Bluetooth was around. So there's no Bluetooth capability. So just don't try to connect. Don't bring your laptop in that morning and plug them in and try to hack the voting machine. You're not gonna get anywhere, but it also doesn't look good, and you can go to jail for that, so. The poll worker, election officers on page 69, those are the ones that are related directly to you as poll workers. So I want you to read through those. There's several of them. But a lot of it just pertains to not tampering with the machines. So like I said, once these are locked and sealed, we can't get back in there and peek at the ballots. You know, you can't look at those ballots. The seal on this can't be broken until the end of the day. Same thing over here on the JBC. Can't break those seals. We can't influence a voter's decision on votes, that type of thing. Vote buying, vote selling, can't do that. Any questions on the state book? Yes.
Who is the official opening time for it in the morning?
It's the sheriff as well.
The sheriff
Yeah.
as well? Okay, so whatever the sheriff has got, either watch, phone, or whatever they say, that's how we.
If it's in reason. I mean, you don't want the sheriff to be off an hour, which, that brings a good point. We fall back on the Sunday before election, so don't forget that. The time changes. So, double check, especially double check your machines. So the machines have the time on them as well. Make sure those have the correct time on them when you get there that morning.
So you go with the time on them.
Technically, I think the sheriff is the official timekeeper, but this should be right. They're all gonna be within a minute or two, so. Sheriff can make a note of that in the sheriff's report. If this is off a couple minutes and, you know, that type of thing, but.
That would be kind of nice, because I think before we've kind of always gone by the machine
And that's probably right. It's gonna be within a minute or two of your phone, so.
and everything, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? That's all I have.
Just when still like we talking about the mail-in, tomorrow is the last day for anybody to request a mail-in ballot. So if you all have family or somebody that's needing a mail-in ballot, they can either call the office tomorrow between 8 and 4, or they can go online on the portal and order it, tomorrow. So tomorrow is the last day for that. So everybody be sure to vote, early or absentee if you're not working in your precinct. And and just like I said, the ones that's gonna be working early, absentee or, early folks, come over and listen to Taylor, talk to you just a minute, and then, we'll see y'all and have a good day, and what's our opinion, call us, you call us. You got our phone numbers on your books.